Well, it all starts with making a plan. And you can do this any way it makes sense. If it's an annual plan, it might be a quarterly plan, it might be a monthly plan. There might be variations of that, but just start somewhere, right? Start somewhere, plan it out, map out what you're doing, make sure that you've got a visual representation of that so you can look at it and say, okay, there's a lot going on. I don't know how we're going to do all this. And then you can start applying resources to that. And then I think you need to be prepared for that plan to change because it's going to.
Welcome to the Modern Car Wash Podcast. I'm your host, Dan St. Jacques, and today we have a very special guest, the ICA's Matt DeWolf, a name, face, and voice I'm sure many viewers and listeners are familiar with. Today, Matt was answering the questions instead of asking them. We covered all things marketing, from content strategy to customer journeys. Matt has a ton of knowledge in the area, and it was great to hear from him. We also did a bit of previewing of the Car Wash Show 2022 and what attendees and exhibitors can expect. Really hope you enjoyed today's show. Without further ado, here it is. All right, Matt. Well, welcome to the Modern Car Wash Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me. I don't often get to be on this side of the questions, so it makes me a little nervous. I'm a little uncomfortable.
I was reading the article when Car Wash Magazine Live launched, and Jimmy Branch from Speedy Car Wash likened you to the Jimmy Kimmel of car washing. I think maybe a more apt comparison would be the Ryan Seacrest of car washing, because they call him the hardest working man in show business, and I know you wear a ton of hats and do a ton. And if Car Wash Idol TV series ever goes into development, I'd have to assume you'd be the front runner for the host of that. So maybe that's a more apt description. But
well, I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
I'm sure you are. So while we get into it, why don't you go ahead and just give us a bit of your background? I know obviously the viewers and listeners are going to be very familiar with your name, voice, face, but don't necessarily know about your background, how you got involved with ICA. So I think that's a great place to start. If you can just kind of give us an idea of your background and what led you to the ICA.
Yeah, sure. I'm an enigma, right? I just float around and I'm out here and I do things. No, so I've been doing content strategy and marketing and kind of all things content creation for going on 2 decades now. And of those 2 decades, probably 15 of those years have involved International Car Wash Association. Like a lot of folks in this industry, I accidentally got a little bit of the soap in my blood early on, and loved the people and just couldn't get away from it. It's like I spent my early years kind of in the industry, traveling around and filming car wash locations. We actually way back in 2008, we had a video program called The Cleaning Edge, where I traveled around and did that, and it was a little ahead of its time. So now we're bringing it back. But
And so I wanted to dive into a couple of the platforms that I think obviously viewers and listeners will be familiar with. So Car Wash Magazine and Car Wash Magazine Live especially, which is now you're closing in on 100 episodes here, especially about that program. Talk a little bit about the creation of that program and sort of its evolution from its inception when you first started it.
yeah, you want me to start with the live stream program?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, that's the easier one. That's the more recent, right? So on the magazine side, we've been at it for about a decade. But for the live program itself, it stemmed out of, honestly, it was like one of the great opportunities that we had with COVID, because like I said, we had done this Cleaning Edge program way back in the day, and it just didn't work out, right? Like there was no distribution channel. Our audience wasn't ready to consume content that way yet. It just wasn't. It wasn't ever really going to work in hindsight. But COVID kind of happened, and there was a lot of just negativity going around, a lot of uncertainty, and we've been kicking around this idea of doing something more consistent for a long time. And I just sort of one day was like, you know what? I think that we all need a little bit of something positive, and so I just hit the live button and put it out there, and we started chatting a little bit. And I think early on, all we were doing was just trying to share a couple of things that were interesting or neat. We shared some tours of Mr. Car Wash, and then it sort of started to evolve, right? And I think one of our early guests was Tom Hoffman, talking about, hey, what are you doing with COVID? How are you making sure that you're going to be able to kind of come through the other side of this? And how are you really getting through this with your business, which really goes back to our whole goal, which is to build community in this industry, to make this industry better, to lift it up, and to just help connect people so that they can share ideas with one another. And that's really kind of the crux of the Car Wash Magazine Live platform, is to share positive stories and to bring us all together through that positive power of storytelling.
And that's one thing, we talk about on this program a lot, which is very, I think, pretty unique about the car wash industry, is sort of the idea sharing that goes on. Because certainly, there's no question that operators are competitive with one another, but we know when you go to any of these conventions and you see how connected all these operators are. I mean, there's just a ton of idea sharing that goes along, and again, that just kind of fosters that feeling of community.
Well, and you see it every time you're talking to somebody, right? If you ask anybody in this industry, you say, "Hey, what do you think about the people in this industry?" Or even one step up, if you say, "What do you love about this industry?" 95% of the people are going to say, "Oh, I love the people in this industry." Everybody's so willing to collaborate and share ideas, and you just don't see that.
No, it really is one of the pieces that makes this industry so unique. And like you said, I think it's probably one of the reasons it ends up being so infectious to people that you don't want to move away. There's no reason to want to move away from it, just because it feels good to be a part of something like that. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why you see so many lifetimers. Doesn't matter when they become involved in the industry, they're there for 20, 30, 40 years at that point, even if it hasn't been in the family business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to dive into now some of the more serious topics that we can have you delve into. These are topics I know you cover a lot, but you're the one, like you said, you're the one asking the questions, don't necessarily get to share your experience with it. And clearly, you're involved with these kind of topics in terms of marketing itself. All day, every day. So I think you're obviously an expert in the field, so a great person to talk to about it. The first thing I wanted to sort of dive into is the idea of the customer journey and talking about what that looks like. Typically or traditionally, there was kind of the idea of the customer funnel and the funnel ending at that purchase decision or making that purchase. But really, for car wash operators, or when you're looking at ICA membership, that's a cyclical process. That after purchase, then what does the experience look like? How do you maintain that loyalty so that the people keep returning? So, how do you see the best sort of ways to attack that and make sure that you're enforcing, a habit for people, you're enforcing that kind of brand loyalty and advocacy, after the initial purchase or sort of a discovery of the brand?
Yeah, you're on one of my favorite topics. I would talk about customer journeys all day, every day, if I could. So I think that this is one of those spaces in our industry where we've got a lot of room to really improve and to really think in an elevated manner, right? Because I think that for a long time, we kind of saw our business was a very transactional thing, and people were going to come, they were going to do it out of convenience, they were going to wash their car on their way home or on their way to work, and that was kind of it. And they didn't really want a relationship necessarily with our business. We spent a lot of time putting car wash signs on our building that just said car wash in big letters, right? And so we kind of trained our customers for a long time to be very transactional and to not look for that relationship. I think what we've seen, though, with the influx of the membership programs is that customers really want something different, right? And so they're looking for a brand. They want to be part of something, which is putting more pressure on us as owners and operators in the industry to be able to deliver on that brand promise and to know what that brand promise is. And so to do that, to do all those things, you have to step back and think about every interaction that you're going to have with that customer before they become a customer. So I think probably the most important thing in this whole creation of customer journeys is sit down and take the time to do it. You got to do the work. You're going to have to put it in on the front end so that you can really reap the rewards down the road. Because if you're not looking like a customer at how you're interacting with your business, you're going to miss lots and lots and lots of opportunities. Even little things like stand outside at your wash and watch people come onto your lot, and then just kind of try and track the people in the car, your customers. Try and track where they're looking. Try and see what that's like for them. See when they start to hit the brakes, right? Maybe maybe your menu position should be moved forward. Maybe you need to have your attendant come out further in the lot to greet them because they're not sure and it's creating a bad experience for them, which nobody wants to do that, right? We're in the business of making customers return, so we don't want that. So take the time, sit down, look at it, and don't do it by yourself. no matter what position you are in the company, that this is not work that you want to do by yourself. You want to sit down and collaborate and really leverage the people who are on site in the field every day, seeing this and being really great sources of where any of these hiccups might be. Because then you've got a really good picture of what can happen on site. You got to look ahead of that, right? So what do our marketing efforts look like? How are we going after customers? What are we putting out there? What's our voice like? And then I think, frankly, the most important piece of this customer journey component is when they exit your wash. So whether you're an in-bay or a rollover or a self-serve or a tunnel, once they leave your wash, what are you doing to maintain that relationship? Because there are tons and tons of opportunities for us to follow up with folks, and I don't think we're frankly doing it. So there's nothing that feels better than getting a reminder of that great experience that you just had. So I go back to like when you're coming out of a tunnel, and I know I'm gonna get roasted on this by a lot of people, but that's okay. I like when there's a human being at the end of the tunnel who, towel dries my car. I know it's whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it's a personal touch. And it reminds me at the end of that tunnel, oh yeah, that was really cool. I really enjoyed that experience. I, as a customer, might come back. Fine, you don't want to put people at the end of the tunnel. That's okay. Put some digital signage at the end of that tunnel. Like, why not? Instead of putting all that effort and all the digital signage up in front before the customer comes in, that's fine. But put something at the end so you've got a chance to message them at the end as they're leaving to be able to remind them of what they just experienced. So I think that those are big things. I think thinking about, man, there's so much here, Dan. Sorry. But man, there's
No.
all this stuff as you're thinking about it. You then go to, okay, they left my property. What am I sending them? Am I emailing them? Am I texting them? Am I creating loyalty programs that I am communicating with people in? Are they in my app? Do I have an app? All these kinds of things, all these touch points, it all funnels in. But it all starts with taking the time to put in the work and to think through the entire process, going beyond when they finish their wash at your location. And it all starts with gathering data and using technology to leverage that.
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it too. I think a lot of the times maybe there's a disconnect between operators within their staff, because I think if you look at from a marketing standpoint, when we talk about touch points, it's easy to start thinking about sort of digital touch points and some of the physical touch points, like the tellers themselves. What do those look like, or the interaction with the attendants, but not necessarily the actual physical placement of signage like you're talking about, or the actual kind of constructs of your site layout. And I think, like you said, that's clearly a very important part of it, is what is it like as a customer? If you don't go through your own wash and understand what's it like as a customer, then how can you properly address those issues? Or if you're not speaking with your staff to say, where are the hang-ups when people are coming through here, then regardless of what the wash is like, if there's any sort of inconvenience along any of those touch points, the way that this industry is booming, there's options. In almost every city, there's going to be an option. And all it takes is one bad experience, regardless if you had 5 good ones before, like always, right? If you've had one bad experience, it's easy to say, I'm going to try something else just because it's not convenient or it's not a good experience going to a different wash.
Well, yeah, any opportunity that you have to eliminate friction, like people need it to be easy, they want it to be positive, and they want it to be pleasant.
And when you talk about customer follow-up too, a lot of that, you have to kind of go look back and do kind of an internal audit about how are you collecting first-party data that you can then leverage into your marketing, right? Because especially with sort of the changes when you look at iOS 14 and all those privacy changes that are happening now, if you're relying on third-party data, eventually, you're not going to be speaking to your customers at all. So how can you effectively capture that information, and then how are you continue to provide value in your communications to your customers so they want you to continue communicating to them, which is, as you mentioned, it's another important point of the follow-up after the initial experience, so it's not just transactional.
Well, and I think a big part of it is as much as we want to try to provide offers and promotions and those kinds of things for our customers, we need to be really intentional in making sure that we're getting something in return for that. Right? It's one thing to throw out, I'm going to give you 10% off, for a wash. I hope that you're going to get my top package and you're going to become an unlimited member. Yeah, that's all fine. But unless you're collecting some customer data along the way to put into your CRM so you can leverage that down the way, it's wasted effort and you're missing a giant opportunity. And I think that is one of the along with customer journeys, I think the whole automation and CRM component and how we're collecting data and leveraging that is a giant opportunity. And I'm hearing a lot of great operators, honestly, talking about how they're leveling up in that space. And it's really cool to see that thinking shift because we're getting bigger. I mean, we can't help that with all this growth and with all this new blood coming into this industry from places that have run 2,000 store chains before. They know that this data component is going to be huge, and they are hiring data analysts to look at it, to build bridges across all their data lakes, and to make sure that they're capturing that information every opportunity that they get, so they can start to make really smart business decisions.
And I mean, that's always a challenge too, right? For smaller operators, the larger their private equity investors or larger chains are going to have the ability to spend more, right? They're always going to be able to outspend you. So it can't just be a case of we're going to dump all this money into advertising. You have to be really smart about the way you're doing it. And still, that goes back to what's the experience like for the customer at your wash itself, right? Because you can't, no matter how much data they can provide digitally, they're not going to be able to quantify really what that experience is like for the customer. So at the end of the day, yes, someone can outspend you. You don't want it to be a case where it's price wars and it's a race to the bottom, but you have to look at what's the experience like for the customer, because there's not going to be a way to outspend everybody always. You just have to be sort of very concentrated in the way that you're leveraging your data and making that a possibility to be able to continue to interact with your customers to maintain that loyalty, and then from an acquisition standpoint as well.
Well, and I think the next kind of step in this, and the next thing that we can kind of do, no matter what size of operation we are, is really be intentional with how we use the data, right? Like actually use this stuff. It's one thing to collect it all, but what are we doing with it? How are we using that data to make the customer experience, to make that customer journey better? And I think there are tons of ways, little things you can do with personalization, right? Like, we're already doing things like when an unlimited member comes in or a VIP member comes in, greeting them by name. That's great. That's fantastic. Have your attendants do that, know that. That's fantastic. But let's go back to that digital signage idea, right? If you've got some signage at the end of the tunnel and this information about that customer who's coming through, message to them specifically. Say happy birthday. I mean, if it's their birthday and you know that information, tell them thanks for purchasing whatever level of wash they purchased. So all of these kind of different layers of opportunity to leverage that data, not just to like acquire new customers, right? Not just to like be able to fire digital messages at them or to remarket them or retarget them, but to be able to create customer experiences that are meaningful and valuable, and at the end of the day are going to make that customer a customer for life.
And sort of to build off that too, I wanted to kind of cover the idea of ensuring that your marketing strategy is sort of an omni-channel operation, though, because you don't want to be just reliant, like you're saying, just reliant on firing out an email to a million people. Yeah. That's a blanket email. It's a standard boilerplate template that you're sending out, and not only having that be the one area where you're putting all your eggs into one basket. So can you just touch on that too, about about experimenting with additional channels and ensuring that that there's sort of a holistic marketing experience there as well?
Yeah, well, and again, I mean, we are so green in this industry in all of this from a digital campaign perspective, and there is so much opportunity. The latest ICA consumer study that we just released, it's the data is in there that says fewer than like 20% of customers remember getting a digital offer from a car wash. Now, that's pretty staggering, right? Like, of all the car washes that we have in the United States and around, in that sample set that we surveyed, 20%. That means there's 80% of people didn't get anything. So I think omni-channel becomes really important. And okay, let's back up a step. Well, what do you mean omni-channel? What does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that you have to abandon everything that you do on a traditional basis. If you have a really successful new movers campaign that you run for your operation, great, do that. That's fine. But put that in tandem and in your plan with other components and other things that you can try. Like, sure, you want to do a Facebook or a Meta ad. That's fine. You can do that. But maybe you should start exploring things like streaming services, right? There's lots of opportunities now with that. Instead of going traditional television, maybe it's a streaming service. Maybe it's a more robust deep dive for you into geofencing. I mean, because that stuff's getting really cool. Where you can sit and kind of like you can identify when people are at the competition down the road and start pinging them with offers. Right? Tired of sitting in that line? Come on over. We've got room for you. So some geofencing stuff. I think even really taking a look at what opportunities we might have in terms of, in a digital space, it's cart abandonment, right? So there might be some of that in this industry as we start to evolve our apps and, start to hit people with messages if they started to sign up for our unlimited program on our website, but then didn't finish that. How can we get back to them? That's a remarketing effort and an abandoned cart effort. But I think you can do that too if you get really smart about purchasing habits of the customers as they come through. And again, it comes back to collect the data and then use the data. Because if I know that Matt comes into this wash and he's going to buy the middle package 90% of the time, but every spring break time, every time in the spring, he wants the top package, and he's going to do that 3 or 4 times in a row. You can use that information to your advantage, and you can start to like shorten that cycle on me, the customer, by making sure that you're messaging to that, right? And that you're paying attention, and you can move me along that funnel, that journey a little bit faster.
And, the other thing I think you have to make sure of when you're setting up these campaigns, and it's great to test out these different methods, but I think it's probably important to do an internal audit too and say, well, what does our infrastructure look like to actually measure the success of these? Like, what before you're doing any of that, like, what are going to be our KPIs when we're looking at this? How are we going to define success when it comes to these things? Because it's great to have this information, just like data about your customers. It's great to have information on how your campaigns are performing, but if you have no idea what you actually want to measure or what you're defining as success, then how are you going to be able to define what's been efficient for you or effective as a marketing tool?
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think that's so huge. And I think that one of the biggest traps that we get into when it comes to measuring is that we try to measure everything. And we try to have 15 different KPIs that are going to indicate success. I'm a big proponent of, like, let's step back and let's just keep it simple. So let's just pick 1 or 2 metrics that for us means that that thing that we did was worth the money we spent on it. It doesn't have to be this deep, robust 12-step approach to, was it successful or not? Just pick a couple of things that are important to you and that frankly that align with your vision for what you want to be when you grow up, and do that, measure on that, and then use that to drive your decisions.
It's the same thing as testing content in your advertising, right? It doesn't mean you need 47 variations of one ad, because again, how are you going to, even if you only have 2 KPIs, if you're measuring it across 47 different ads, then you're not going to be able to really tell what's most effective. But simple as A/B testing, right? 2 things, 1 image or 1 line of text that changes out, can yield totally different results. And something that, as long as again you have your measurement in place of what you're looking at as success, then it's pretty easy to understand what's effective for you, in those certain points.
Yeah. And I would say too, make sure that what you're measuring makes sense. So what do I mean by that? So if you are, let's say you're exploring TikTok and you're getting into TikTok, measuring the number of followers you get in TikTok is not really a fantastic metric. It's fun, and it's, you'll see growth going the right way that you want it to go. But when you think about things like that, a lot of those folks are not going to be in your geographic market. They're not potential customers. So it doesn't really make sense to measure that, because what are you going to do with that information, right? We have 1 million TikTok followers. Great. But how is that impacting your ability to create relationships with your customers in your market and then drive traffic to your location? So make sure it makes sense.
And actually, kind of to build off that too, I wanted to circle back and kind of talk about the idea of developing a content strategy for a brand as well. Because I think, like you said, it's easy for to get caught sort of chasing squirrels, where you see something pop up like TikTok that's had the growth that it's had, and to say it's a channel we have to be on. But do you have to be on there? How do you evaluate what channels, like you're saying, make the most sense in terms of the way you're communicating to the people who are actually going to be customers for your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to kind of foundational concepts, right? But it's like, number one, you got to know who you are as a company and as an organization. Who are you? Who do you want to be when you grow up? Do you have that vision set in place so that you can go back and say, that doesn't really align with where we want to be? And then I think the other thing that's super important is, this is going to sound so cliche, but it's so true. You got to know your customers. Like, what's the demographic that you're going after? Do the research. Look at, if it is TikTok, and let's say you can dive into your geographic region to see if the age ranges of who you're trying to attract to your business align with that demographic. That makes sense. But I think one of the other things that kind of gets us sideways sometimes in the space is all of these platforms and all of these things require content strategy, right? They require not only the strategy behind it, it requires the editorial calendar to be in place to execute against it, and it requires resource to create the things. Like we talk all the time, or I do at least, about the content monster and how it's always chasing. It's always coming to get you. It's always going to eat you. And in what we do on a normal basis, where we're feeding media publications and podcasts and that kind of thing, it's very tangible. But I think that when you take it at a marketing perspective, it's there too. That monster is chasing you. You've got to have a strategy in place, and you got to know how in the heck, if I get into TikTok, or if I want to put a really concerted effort toward the kind of social presence I have on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, you gotta think about how you're gonna resource that and how you're gonna scale it, because otherwise you're gonna be stretched real thin, and you're not gonna do any of it well at all.
That's another thing I want to touch on too, about scaling marketing efforts, and how do you build off that initial component when you start looking at your own marketing efforts and saying, okay, we're sort of, you look at your KPIs, you look at your growth, whatever it is, and you're saying we're sort of tapped out in what we're doing right now. How do you identify those levels, and then how do you, move beyond that? Essentially, how do you grow that part of it?
Well, so shameless plug. We're like in the same vein of wavelength right now, because we are about to have a meeting with 3 other car wash marketers about this exact topic. So that's going to be our last Thursday of the month episode for Car Wash Magazine Live and the podcast this month, and in March. So I don't know when the release date is for this specific episode, but in March 31, you can watch that. But I think that when it comes to like how to figuring out how to scale up what you're doing from a marketing perspective, I think a lot of it comes back to things that we do in the business every day anyway. I mean, I think that car wash people are really good at process engineering, right? And so that's like really easy to do and really like familiar for people in this industry. So that's going to be a really useful skill, but not at the beginning, right? Because I think if you want to scale, it comes back to probably 3 things. And I've said this already about knowing who you want to be with when you grow up, but this is really important when it comes to scaling your marketing efforts, because at some point you're going to have to outsource some of this capability, or you're going to have to bring on staff to be able to execute on this vision. And if nobody has the vision, you're not going anywhere. Like, you can't see anything. So, one really important component to that is that vision has to be created by you. Like, you might bring in a consultant to help you with that exercise, and that's totally fine. But you need to know who you want to be when you grow up, because if you go to an agency and say, yeah, we need more customers, can you just like get me more customers? That you are going to get poor results every single time. So having that vision in place, and then using that as you bring on agencies, as you outsource, as you bring on resources in-house, you use that vision to help drive and onboard those folks so they can kind of become part of your team. And then they're going to get it. They're going to get the joke. They're going to be able to produce better results, produce better content, and to really take less of your time and to leave you feeling less frustrated with what's going on. There's nothing more painful than sending something out to get done, and you get back that first version, and you're like, oh my gosh, that is not even close. And so then you sit there and you type back the email, and you're like, gosh, why am I doing this? I could have done it myself. And then next thing you know, the next one comes back and it's still not good. And it's all because you didn't have a good vision and you didn't provide creative direction on the front end to get that result you wanted. So you got to know who you want to be, and you got to put in the work with those groups. I think the other thing that comes up when you start thinking about, okay, I need to scale up my marketing. I need to level up here. I can't do it all myself. What am I going to do? Well, it all starts with making a plan. And you can do this any way it makes sense. If it's an annual plan, it might be a quarterly plan, it might be a monthly plan. There might be variations of that, but just start somewhere, right? Start somewhere, plan it out, map out what you're doing, make sure that you've got a visual representation of that so you can look at it and say, okay, there's a lot going on. I don't know how we're going to do all this. And then you can start applying resources to that. And then I think you need to be prepared for that plan to change, because it's going to. They always change. You can map out a year, but 6 months in, whatever you had planned for December, throw it away. It's probably not happening. And then I think the last thing is keep your measurement simple. So if you're looking at scaling up and you're trying to think about, okay, I kind of want to really get into this. Let's just use TikTok. It's my favorite bad example, but I want to get into TikTok. We really want to go there. How are we going to decide how we're going to do that? How are we going to make sure that we can have somebody doing that for us? Well, there's lots of resources that will do those types of things for you. But go into it with a clear goal in mind, saying, look, what we want to do with TikTok is create 4 pieces of content per month that we can use on TikTok and that we can use in our other social channels to be content creation for us as we build out our other components. So what does success look like then there? We created 4 pieces of content. Don't even get into how many people watched the thing or any of that. Just start simple with, we created the thing. We did it. You can get more sophisticated later when you get that into a cadence and you start to scale it. But that gives you information on kind of knowing what's possible with what resources you have available to be able to know how much you have to scale.
Right. I think that's always the challenge too about, how much you're gonna be able to allocate to that. If you're a smaller operator, how much you're gonna be able to allocate to your marketing efforts and leveraging things like, user generated content too. How much can you allow your users and customers to be the ones that are creating your content, right? Because a lot of times that's the stuff that plays the best anyway, and people feel a little bit more of a connection to your brand too, both whether it's that customer themselves or anybody else that's consuming that content. Yeah,
leveraging the folks that are in the field, boots on the ground, day to day is a great way to kind of build up a content base. Now, but it still comes back to, you got to know who you want to be, because you have to be able to tell your staff what you're really looking for. Your direction to staff cannot be go make fun videos, because guess what you're going to get? Stuff that is not brand aligned. It is not going to be good, and you're going to wonder why you ever bothered in the first place. But if you can say, hey, I want 3 videos per month from our locations that highlight one feature of the wash, one feature the customers really love at that wash. That's a very direct thing that people can do, and they can really attach to it, and it's a task they can complete.
Like you said, you develop your plan, you can lay out your plan for marketing, but really essentially what that ends up looking like is it's like not to get too much into mobile app design here, but it's like wireframing when you're laying out a UI. It's just giving you kind of the constructs of what it's going to look like, but it's not actually filled in at all. And as that goes, that design can also entirely change, but at least it gives you the structure for what you're trying to accomplish without actually having to fill in, all the holes right from the start, right from day one.
You don't have to know all the things. You just have to know loosely. Yeah, it's the tiered approach, right? Let's go really big, and then we're going to dial it down, and then we're going to dial it down again, and then at some point we've got a plan that is our day-to-day execution plan. And that's, that's tactical. That's highly tactical. That's got the information you need. And you're looking at that like once a week, maybe. Dan, I got something I just have to share. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have to share.
go.
So you got me on this path. I was thinking you were talking about frameworks.
Yeah.
And I think like these plan pieces are great. I think that in this industry, we all need frameworks. I think in life, we all need frameworks, right? It just makes decision-making easier. Something that I think everybody in this industry should do is go through a brand script exercise. Are you familiar with what this is?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I use it at ICA like every day. Like it's my home base. It helps me make lots and lots of decisions when it comes to content and how we're approaching things and how we're like using our voice. And so what a brand script is, for anybody that's not familiar, it's a very simple, straightforward framework, right? To be able to lean on when you're thinking about how your brand shows up, how you talk about things, what kind of problems your customers might be encountering at different stages of the purchasing cycle. But at the root of it, it comes back. It's really simple. If you think about every story you've ever seen, there's always a hero, there's always a conflict, there's always a villain, and there's always some guide that helps them along the way. And I think that one of the things that we screw up most in this world is that as organizations, as companies, we try to be the hero for our customers. And we have to remember that we are not the hero, but we are always the guide. And I think that's super important. I think when we try to be the hero, customers tune out because they want to be the hero. The customer's the hero, and we're the guide. We're just helping them have a great day. I think that's a super important thing to do. But the exercise is super cool. It's really helpful, I think. I mean, it really, I did it several years ago, and it really helped bring some structure to just the way that I approach things.
Right, and that just goes back again to like everything that you've been saying. What do you want to be when you grow up? Who are you exactly as a brand? What's your voice? What are you relaying to your customers? Because it all goes back to consistency of experience, consistency of understanding for your customer of this is who you are. And the better you are at identifying that yourself, it's going to be a lot easier to communicate that through your content, through your marketing, to your customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I don't want to keep you forever. You've been so gracious with your time, but I do want to just get a quick plug in about the car wash show. We're coming up right around the corner. If you can just give our folks who are going to be attending just a few of the highlights to look forward to and what you're excited about for this year, obviously being back in Nashville.
Yeah, it's coming up. It turns out it's right around the corner. Yeah, I think there's a lot of great stuff. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this show is a fantastic opportunity to just see your people, see your car wash peers, connect with new people in the industry. I think the industry has been changing so much so fast in the last couple of years that it's more important now than ever that people are at these types of shows because you're going to miss something and you're going to miss a really key contact that you should have made because you just didn't show up. So I think that's super, super important is just, I'm excited to see people, right? See all the car wash people in this industry. And here's an insider tip, right? Like when we do this show in Nashville, it feels so much different from anywhere else that we do the show because it feels like the car wash community takes over the entire city. So it's like everywhere you walk into, you're bumping into people who are in the industry. And so it's a really cool vibe and a really neat way to like connect with others. I'm super excited. And this is like, I don't know, you might be first release on this. We are launching a new brand of Car Wash Magazine. And so this publication, we're in 10 years into it. We had a great run with what it started out to be and what it's kind of evolving into. But we're going to unveil that brand really a couple of weeks before the show, and then it's going to be distributed there at the show. It is, it's going to be different, but in a good way. It's like we've been evolving this thing over time so that it's a really positive representation of what's going on in this industry, and that it can be a publication that everybody can be proud of and makes you feel really great about being in this industry. And this new version, the design, the content is going to be so good. So good. I'm super excited because I just saw the first proof yesterday. So that's going to be cool. And then like two more things that I think are pretty neat. maybe 3. The education's always good, and this year we've got one pass that gets you all of that. So it's super simplified. So you buy your pass, you show up, and you go to any of the education. And on the education front, obviously we're going to be doing Car Wash Magazine live at the studio. They're on the show floor, so lots of education, lots of peer opportunities there to hear from great people. And then one thing on the exhibitor side that's pretty new this year, we're doing this Innovation Alley piece, which is really reserved for people who are new to the car wash industry, and it's exhibitors kind of in a row there that instead of being traditional 10 by 10s where you walk to the back of the hall and you find some of the new people that popped in back there. It's a dedicated space so you can kind of go look at all those new entrants to really kind of get some of those great kind of mystery finds that you get at one of these shows right out of the gate, right in the key area. So super cool stuff. Look, it's the car wash show, man. How can you not be excited?
And we have a phrase that pays this year again, correct? We track you down.
Yeah, you you got it, man. You know what? We're finalizing prizes for that. Here's the deal, though. I can't give the phrase that pays just yet because, well, I don't know what it is yet. But I will know what that phrase is in a week or so. And so if you want to hear the phrase that pays, you got to listen to Car Wash the Podcast.
So perfect teaser for Car Wash the Podcast. Perfect teaser for the new Car Wash Magazine Live. Car Wash Magazine. So we're in good shape there. Before I let you go now, final question. I know you're a big Minnesota Twins guy. Tough year last year. 2022, we got some good acquisitions this year. Big Carlos Correa signing. Just your thoughts quickly on this season for the Twins. You got any predictions and what you're expecting out of your boys this year?
Well, look, it's Minnesota sports, man. Like, it's never good. Even in the years when it's like the best, it's never good. So I think that they'll probably have a pretty good regular season. They will expertly get the hopes up of everybody who watches and is a fan, and then they will send you crashing down in a pit of despair as they miss the playoffs once again. So that's my prediction for the Twins.
Well, that's good though. At least you're prepared for the. It's better to set. It's a perfect place to set the bar because then there's no disappointment at the end. Right, at the end of the day, if you set your expectations too high, yeah. When you go into any sports season excited, you're just setting yourself up for failure at the end of the day. So it's probably the best way to do it.
I've been a Cubs fan since growing up, and like talk about a team that'll break your heart every single season except for 2016. 2016 was a great year.
They got one in there.
Yeah, got one.
All right, Matt. Well, you got to live through it. That's more than a lot of people can say, though. So you got that. You got the feather in your cap.
Yeah, it's a once in a century opportunity.
That's it. Well, Matt, thank you so much again for your time. I know I kept you longer than I thought I was going to, but it's just too hard to cut you off there anywhere. And I really appreciate your time. And it was great talking to you. So I really appreciate you joining us. And thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm always happy to chat car washing with anybody.
We'll look forward to seeing you then in Nashville and just around the corner, about 60 days or so. Well, that's it for today's show. A huge thank you again to Matt DeWolf for joining us. As always, you can find more about Innovate It at innovateitcarwash.com. You can visit us at the Car Wash Show 2022 at booth 857 and subscribe to the Modern Car Wash Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for joining. We'll see you next time.